Hi, I'm Mike Kelly, the voice of the Missouri Tigers, and welcome inside the brand new West County Nissan. Here's what you need to do. You need to get your Tiger tail down to Manchester Road in Baldwin and come inside the brand new West County Nissan.
Inside College Sports rolls on here on the Big 550, KTRS in St. Louis. I'm Mike Kelly. Vahe Gregorian of the Post-Dispatch is alongside, and it is a pleasure to welcome to the program one of the all-time good guys in college athletics in terms of covering college athletics. He's a friend of ours from the Kansas City Star. We say hi to Blair Kerkhoff. How are you, sir?
I am doing well. Hope you guys are too.
Well, we're doing great, and we appreciate you coming on with us tonight and spending some time with us. You haven't been asked at all about conference realignment lately, have you?
What? Conference what? No, that's all I seem to be asked lately, and it's all that I seem to be spending my time on here. Not lately, but probably for the last month. I mean, I'll go back to Big 12 Media Days in Dallas back at the end of July when the story wasn't how are these teams going to do this year. It's which teams are going to be left in the Big 12, in the future. I think that's probably when the A&M story started to gain some steam, and now it's now we're 6 to 7 weeks later, and it's not only gained steam, but it's it's not even the school we're talking about anymore. Breaking up the Big 12. We've moved on from A&M, and now we're discussing Oklahoma and what's going to happen at this conference.
Look into your crystal ball. What is the next shoe to drop, if you will?
I think the next piece of news is going to come from Oklahoma, and what they're going to at some point here make their desire known, what Oklahoma wants to do, and all the indications from Oklahoma have been that they seem to be more interested in the Pac-12 than the Big 12, and if that's the case, they would possibly take Oklahoma State with them, and so now, if that's the case, we're left with 7 in the Big 12, and to me the question becomes, can it hold together with 7? Would schools trust Texas enough for it to hold together, and or would that be the last moment for the conference? Would it just unravel at that point? I think those are the and now that assumes that Oklahoma expresses a desire publicly, which hasn't happened yet, but publicly expresses a desire to go to the Pac-12, and the Pac-12 welcomes them in, and they bring Oklahoma State, and so it's all depending on that. But all the word that we've seen out of Oklahoma, all through unnamed sources, because that's sort of how this story has evolved, has been that that's where they're interested in being, and then what happens to the Big 12 after that.
Blair, I've talked to some people in Pac-12 land a little bit and have the sense that it's not by any means a layup that the Pac-12 really would do just Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. So I guess that's one lingering question. But the question I really want to ask you is, what do you see for Oklahoma in this, other than the idea that they're in a conference with stability? I mean, is it a competitive advantage for Oklahoma ultimately? Why is it good for OU to make this move?
I think Oklahoma they'll be competitive anywhere they play. We know that. I think there are a few things here with the Sooners. One is the desire of the president, David Boren, to have his school in a conference that includes Stanford and California, a couple of academic heavyweights. That's never a bad thing for the for the academic side of your university. The other thing is, and this probably hasn't gotten a lot of discussion, is I think that Bob Stoops has an affinity for the conference, and not just because his brother Mike is coaching in Arizona. I just, as long as I've known Bob, and I actually think it goes back to his Iowa playing days when they actually played in the Rose Bowl back in the early '80s. But even since he's been at Oklahoma, I remember when the Sooners played in the Rose Bowl one year. They played Washington State, and just how how important that was to him to have access to the game that year, and he's talked about it openly, how he enjoys the Rose Bowl and the Coliseum and playing out there, and so I think there may be part of it. And of course, he, in his public comments he hasn't hid that desire. Now, he hasn't said it in a week or so, but a couple of weeks ago, he was speaking openly about his, how much he enjoys the Pac-12, or how much he likes the Pac-12. So I think there's that as well. And then the final thing, and what you hear from what I've heard from the folks I've talked to at Oklahoma, is they're tired of this. They're tired of the drama, wondering year after year if the conference is going to hold together, and I think that they probably wouldn't have minded being, having this happen last year when it could have happened with Texas leading the schools out. But I think Oklahoma is willing to make this move and not with Texas, and have if it's just Oklahoma and Oklahoma State invited to that conference and not Texas, I think they're willing to do that, and they would go. Now, I think they'd want to protect the Cotton Bowl, the Red River rivalry game, as much as they could, but I think they'd even be willing to give that up if that meant admission into the Pac-12.
It's Blair Kerkhoff of the Kansas City Star with us tonight on Inside College Sports. I'm Mike Kelly. Vahe Gregorian is alongside.
Blair, do you have a sense that if there is a stay of execution, so to speak, that we're just still in limbo anyway? I mean, in other words, if obviously this passes with the Pac-12 and let's say BYU comes into the Big 12, are we just all looking over our shoulders anyway?
Well, and let me follow up with this. How can you foster good relationships inside of any family, if you will, if everybody's trying to sue one another to prevent the other one from gaining a better deal?
Well, right. To answer the question is, I don't see how. I think the trust has already gone from this conference, and I'm not so sure how much they ever trusted each other completely. The Big 12 is just unlike any other conference in that it's it was never about what's best for the whole, best for the conference as a whole. It was about it was about what was best for the biggest budgeted schools, and the rest of you just be thankful that you're associated with the bigger budgeted schools, and so that's every conference has these types of schools. They have the schools that are, have the $90-100 million athletic budgets, but only in this conference only in the Big 12 has it, been as unequal in terms of revenue sharing and just terms of perception as it is in the Big 12. And that, if for some reason it held together and Oklahoma and Oklahoma State didn't go to the Pac-12 and they did get a 10th member, I think that for the conference to have any kind of long-term sense of security, you would have to rewrite the Constitution. You'd have to have equal revenue sharing, across the board. Something, and I couldn't even begin to tell you what would have to happen to the Longhorn Network, which is, inherently unequal when it comes to exposure for one conference school over the others. But you would everybody would have to have an equal stake in this conference, and even if it held together, I'm not sure the bigger budgeted schools are willing to do that. And again, to me the question becomes how many different times would you have to go through this crisis? So again, even if it was at 7, that's why I think that maybe it's in the best interests of Missouri, of Kansas, of Iowa State, of Kansas State to maybe look at other deals, other conferences for long-term security.
And as you look at it, this isn't just an indictment of Dan Beebe, but from my perspective, as I've thought about this, from the get-go, it goes back to, I think, a lack of a quality demanding leader at the top of the conference. I mean, if you look at Jim Delaney, if you look at Mike Slive, I'd even say if you put Larry Scott in that category, and then you bring Dan Beebe into the mix, one of these things is not like the other. But it's not just Beebe. It's Kevin Weiberg, and it's the Steve Hatchell who originated the league. I don't think that there's ever been strong leadership in the commissioner's position in the Big 12. Would you agree?
Well, I'll tell you, Mike, and it's funny you bring that up because I'm getting ready to write a column about. I don't know if the Big 12 was set up to have a powerful commissioner. I thought about
with
this.
With respect to the commissioner, they are constantly, it seems like, at least in Beebe's shoes, undermined by his members.
Well, right, and I know Vahe and I were both around when the league was started. Mike, you were too, and there was, when this conference started, when it was this merger of the Big 8 and the 4 Texas schools, the whole idea then was about whose rules are we following here? Who's the commissioner? Where's the league office going to be? What are the academic qualifications for football players? We had a lot of issues that way, and instead of the commissioner kind of putting his foot down and saying, this is how it's going to be, this is how we're going to operate, which is what I would think happens in other conferences. It was, okay, Texas, how should it be? What do you want? Nebraska, what's your idea on this? And that's how it came together with a bunch of votes of presidents, which is, look, it's how in every conference presidents vote, but it's usually the commissioner that sets the agenda, that has done the legwork, right, that does all the work on this, and then brings that to the presidents to basically have something rubber stamped. That's never how it's been in this conference. And so you've got 12 presidents with pretty much 12 different agendas. For Nebraska and Colorado and Texas A&M, and now we think Oklahoma, they all think that, they all have believed that there's a better place for them, and the conference wasn't strong enough to keep them together.
Blair, thank you. We appreciate it.
Okay, guys, take care.
Thanks so much, Blair.
Blair Kirchhoff of the Kansas City Star. A final word after this on Inside College Sports on the Big 550, KTRS.
Hi, I'm Mike Kelly, the voice of the Missouri Tigers, and this is a brand new 2011 Nissan Armada. And look at this. You want to talk about tailgating Tiger style. This is it. Imagine you and your friends heading down Highway 70 from Baldwin to go to a Tiger game in this brand new Armada. It's the perfect way to celebrate a Mizzou football Saturday.